Hey, welcome to Sipping Tea with Sabrina. In just a second, we'll be sharing the tea on leadership with less stress, greater impact, and more joy. Let me say today it couldn't be a better day for me to hear this message as I am having some extreme tech issues. But we're gonna we're gonna pause on that, and I'm gonna say if you've never met me before, my name is Sabrina. I'm the Dream Team Architect and President and CEO of Building Better Boards. I specialize in building elite leadership teams for corporate and nonprofit boards and CEOs, turning high level potential into extraordinary performance. And if you're looking to transform your board or need support working with other board, with your board or your team, you've come to the right place. Again, my name is Sabrina Walker Hernandez. I'm a facilitator for corporate and nonprofit organizations, international keynote speaker, and your go to expert in strategic leadership and governance excellence. And I've helped drive $14 million in revenue while building organization resilience. And that was one project, y'all. And I'm here to share the insights and strategies that make real difference for you and your organization. Now, this topic that we are going to be talking about is near and dear to my heart, and we are I'm going to invite Rachel Krinsky to the stage because this conversation is critical. If you want to understand leadership with less stress, greater impact, and more joy. So, whether you're a nonprofit association, a nonprofit, a mission driven company, we have with us today Rachel, who is going to come to the stage and share with us a little bit about herself. First of all, before you do that, Rachel, I want to say thank you for being here. Again, this topic is near and dear to my heart because I remember being stressed out and overwhelmed sitting in that seat. And the fact that you are here and are going to help people in that capacity, it means a lot. So, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, Rachel?
Well, thank you so much for having me with you today, Sabrina. I served as a nonprofit executive director for over 2 decades in 3 different nonprofits, working in the areas of homelessness, racial equity, and domestic violence. And I know what it's like to be sitting in that seat, trying to make change, seeing a vision, and all of the things that come with that. I did 2 major capital campaigns during that time, and I like to tell people that one of those major capital campaigns started in January of 2008. So I
The
know,
recession.
yes, right, and our target, our original plan was to raise most of that money from the real estate market, so that had to pivot. And this moment right now, where so many things are uncertain and there is just an overwhelming amount of changing information, is such a hard time for leaders. And we're going to talk more about that. But I have so much empathy and so much resonance for what it feels like to be in that seat and trying to care for an organization and a team and a mission under those circumstances.
Yeah, it is hard. And that's why I was like, oh, I can't wait for this conversation. So, you and I both know, having done what we've done, that burnout is a significant issue in the nonprofit sector. What are some of the early warning signs leaders should watch out for in themselves and in their teams?
Burnout is a big topic, and I think you know you that there's a lot of writing about burnout. I would say that when you start to feel or see in others a sense of exhaustion, a sense of, for me, it was this feeling of just no to everything. I would get an email, any email, and I would just think, oh no, or ugh, or ick, just that you can't absorb anymore. And then as burnout starts to get worse, there is a loss of faith, real cynicism, and starting to lose empathy for everyone, for teammates, for clients, for yourself. So, and it can become rigid. Um, I've been through burnout more than once, and I would
Mm,
start to notice that I lost my ability to flex, to see multiple perspectives, to be interested in growth.
okay. It's very interesting that you said it because I'm going through the list in my head. Like, did I experience that? And I think I did have a lot of that experience. And so, how can, as you're going through that, yeah, you have to recognize it. But if you don't even recognize it, I guess, what do you think that leads to that kind of burnout? I know I had a hard time with delegating, and so if you could speak to maybe like how can nonprofit leaders effectively delegate without feeling like they're abandoning their responsibilities, that might benefit our audience.
I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to back up a minute
Okay.
because there are things that are happening before that. I think there's the why,
Right.
and before we get to the how.
Hmm. Hmm.
So right now, there are at least 4 things I'm hearing over and over from the clients that I'm working with as a consultant and a coach. One is about overwhelm, just the sheer amount of information and decision making. People talk about decision fatigue, being overwhelmed by information, by decisions, by the number of tasks. So that's one.
Hmm.
Learning the skills to deal with overwhelm, and delegation is a piece of that, but that's
Okay.
one. Another one is uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty right now. And how do you decide, like, what is the right amount of scenario planning that is going to help you be responsive without driving yourself and your team and everyone crazy imagining the future that you can't predict? So, uncertainty and dealing with uncertainty. And then there's that scarcity mentality or reality. Like there are a limited number of hours, there are a limited number of people, there is an amount of money. And I like to think about prioritization rather than scarcity. How do you decide where is the really best place to put those resources? So thinking about that. And then there's communication. In these moments in particular, this is always an issue, and I will say these are always the topics in my business. So in
Hmm.
some ways, nothing is new, but they're amplified right now. It's even harder.
Okay.
And with communication, it's about how do we tell people enough to be transparent, to be authentic, but not overshare in a way that creates more upset, more panic, or shares information that people shouldn't have, like personnel information. So figuring out what to communicate is really hard. And all of these things, having the skills to deal with these things earlier is what can prevent burnout later. And the core of my work, actually, is
Hmm.
helping people find a way to be calm and clear and centered.
Okay.
And I don't say, like, this is not toxic positivity. This is not like
Hmm.
everything will be fine.
Right.
That doesn't help anybody. But this is about having practices to get back to that very grounded, centered place
Hmm.
so that you can find your wisdom, you can find your truth, you can come back to, like, what is actually needed now?
Hmm.
What are those next right steps? So getting all the way back to your question about delegation.
Hmm.
When I talk to people about delegation, there are several pieces of it. One is figuring out, if I'm a leader, what is most important for me? What is actually my job? And when I'm working with leaders, it can be really hard for leaders to keep themselves in the strategy piece because it's appealing to get into the weeds and to, like, so getting back to what are the top 3 things that will move this organization forward that really belong to me? And how can I clear the space to focus on that thing that I can do, that needs my skill set, that needs my authority, that will move this organization forward and
Hmm.
take care of everyone? So that's one. Then what do I do with the rest of it? Are there some things that can be delayed? Are there some things that can literally be dropped? That's so hard for people. But what if we just don't do that right now or at all? Are there some things that we can do we all want to do everything so well. Can we get a C at something?
Right.
Can we just not do it well, but get it done? What can we just like? And then delegating. As a leader, we want to take care of our people. We don't want to just drop more stuff on their plates. They're usually
Mm-hmm.
working so hard already. Thinking about delegation as a growth opportunity, and this is not double speak,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes people really want an opportunity to step in and help. Sometimes by overprotecting, we're
Mm-hmm.
not actually asking, like, what would be interesting to you? Where's an opportunity for you to learn? What pieces do you want? Also, this same process with them. What can they delegate? What can they drop? What can they get a C at? Like, how can we take things off their plate to take this next piece?
Right.
So it's a negotiation. It's a conversation. It's thoughtful. Delegating by just dropping things on already full plates is not kind.
Right.
And not effective. But talking through, there can be a real gift in delegation if it's done well. And it gives people opportunities to thrive.
Right. So I'm listening and I'm processing because again, this was something that was very hard for me, and continues to be kind of hard for me. So when I am connected in a space with people who are experts in this, I really want to ask the questions that I know that others maybe who have my personality struggle with. So you said a couple of things, and I know we have a set of questions here, but I want to go back to um, the delegation, but lead into the next question, which is around work-life balance. Because I'm sharing with you that when people talked about would delegate or work-life balance, I was one of the people who would like kind of roll my eyes and go like, "There's no work-life balance. There's no delegating." Very much to what you said, who am I going to delegate it to? Everybody else is overwhelmed. But if you were talking to on the other side, imagine that person because I recognize it as an issue. I'm still working on it. I've come a long way because life forced me to, but I know that there are CEOs and executives sitting in that seat right now who are hearing you and they're having that reaction. What would you say to them? What kind of practical strategies would you give them to help them with that mindset, to kind of help them get through that eye rolling around delegation and work life
Yeah,
balance?
absolutely. And I have certainly seen the eye rolling. I would say two things right now. One is we have a values conflict in many of our organizations where we say work-life balance, but what we model and what we actually value and appreciate is the opposite.
Yeah.
So if you are a leader who is saying, "Oh, I want you all to take care of yourself. I want you to not send emails on the weekend. I want you to go home. I want this to be a healthy workplace." But you are working 24/7. Everyone sees you giving gold stars or thank yous to people who go the extra mile. Your walk and your talk aren't matching up. And if what you really want, if in your heart you really want people to be able to have a healthy balance and spend time healing and with their families, they're not going to do that if what they see from you is something different. So that's one. The other thing is I'll just tell a story. I've been working with a nonprofit executive director who is exactly as you're describing. She wants to have work-life balance for herself. She wants it for her staff, but every time she starts to let something go, she just takes it back. It's so hard to not work hard and do everything really well. And she loves her organization. It all comes from the heart.
Mhm.
And I could add a lot of things to this. There are lots of reasons why, and there always are, why she is working so hard and so many hours and exhausting herself. And she had one really neat experience where something finally broke her. Like she just had to ask for help. It got to suddenly she had to do a grant proposal. It got dropped on her. It was the last minute, and we were working together. I guess she didn't have to, but in working together, she was willing finally to delegate a little bit. And she asked two of the members of her team to help her with this grant proposal. And it was such a beautiful experience for all of them. These two people felt trusted. They felt valued for their knowledge and skills. They felt brought in. She felt so much less alone. There was a real sense of growth in their relationship. There was a sense of team. It gave her a little window about how delegating could be not dumping, but inviting. Has she become a whole new person, and does she do this all the time? No. Does she do it more often? And is it something that she's building into her tool belt? Yes.
That's a good story. I think that sometimes we just forget. I went through, like I said, I'm always in progress, right? And so I went through this whole thing, like a 9 month, like birthing a baby, right? Like project to come out and say we need to do less to do more. But it was a whole paradigm shift. So you said invite people in, but how else can leaders foster a culture of well-being? You said invite people in, is what you said.
Yeah.
When it comes to the delegation process. You also said, are you living your values, which was a good key, because I was not living my values at all. I was saying, yeah, I want this, I want y'all to take care of yourself, but I wasn't. But how can leaders foster, those two I really heard, foster a culture of well-being in the organization while still driving towards ambitious goals? I think for a lot of us, that budding of those two is really a struggle. So what are your thoughts around that?
Let me say one more thing about delegation, and then I'm going to get to there. The other thing I see in leaders with delegation is I will hand you something and say, okay, this is yours. But then when you bring it back to me, I'll say, well, no, I didn't like it that way. That is not delegation. If you're going to hand something to someone, you have to trust them and trust their wisdom. Yes, you need an end product. So if they don't finish it or they don't get to the deadline, that's one thing. But if you're going to delegate, then you can't micromanage. So trusting, believing in people's wisdom, giving them the tools and support they need, giving them the benchmarks, give them what they need to be successful, and then let them do it. So that's another whole piece. There's a lot of, many of us in leadership have a real need to control. And that is sort of the hidden sister of the delegation problem.
Yeah. It really is. It really is. And
Um,
so knowing that, and we're the leaders and we have to create the culture, help us out.
Yes.
Give us some strategies.
So creating a culture of wellness, that's a multifaceted thing. It's a multifaceted challenge, and it starts with yourself. So again, walking the walk. I will say that also it doesn't end with yourself. So if you are a leader who's taking care of yourself, but you're not making it possible for the people who work for you to take care of themselves, that doesn't work either. It is everything from looking at your policies, looking at your practices, looking at how do you build in to meetings, little tiny grounding practices and check-ins that let people center and be human in the space. There are so many ways to do this. And to your question about how do you bring in humanity and still reach the goals, I'm really interested in your word ambition, because there's ambition for ambition's sake, and then there's ambition for the mission. And that's always an interesting question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
And
don't, I'm sorry, I want to say this because as you're processing, I'm processing. And I am like, okay, a lot of us, I won't speak for everybody. I am type A, and I will be honest in my reflections that sometimes the ambition was for the mission, but it was also very eccentric
mhm,
for me. It was
yes,
the it was my mode. Like I am the oldest child. I am used to being in charge. I have excelled all my life. I am not going to get in this and not excel. So it was dual for
I
me.
feel you, Sabrina.
And
I am
I'm
the oldest child.
yeah.
Yes, I feel you. Um, it is really important to have goals and to move towards those goals, and our missions matter.
Mhm.
You know, in every organization that I was the executive director or CEO for, we had such extreme needs and so many people we couldn't serve. And the drive to build more housing, to reach more people, to have more safety, like those things were real. And at the same time, driving so hard and so fast that we burn our staff out and they leave, and then we have to hire new people, that doesn't serve our clients. That breaks relationships, that breaks trust, that slows down some of what we're trying to accomplish. So, setting goals and building culture that will actually support what we're trying to do in the world, honestly, those are aligned. They're not either or. If you're going to really touch the core of what you're trying to do in the world, the best way to do that is to move together in a healthy way at a pace that isn't so fast that people are falling off the bus. And I will say I did not always do that well, because I share some of what you're talking about.
Right, right.
But
Oh, see,
at the
now you're
time,
falling off the bus, girl. You got me because we always talk about do you have the right people on the bus in the
yeah,
right seat? We never talk about are people falling off the bus
yes,
because the
people
bus
are
is
falling
moving too
off the
fast.
bus.
Oh, that is excellent. That
Yeah,
is brilliant. It's a
yeah,
question I've never asked myself in this whole process of changeover and all of that. It was more like, oh, they just weren't a right fit for this organization, and they don't understand how the mission works and how we this is what we have to do.
yeah,
Oh, I never heard falling. Are people falling off the bus because
yeah.
we're moving it in a way?
And if you
Oh,
think about those moments, if I think about those moments in my leadership career where almost everyone was on the bus driving down the road with this vision together of where we were going, those were beautiful moments.
yeah.
I will also tell you, because this will make you laugh, that my husband and I spent some time living and working in a bus. And actual buses do not go that fast.
Right. They're capped at a certain what 70,
That's
80,
right.
something like that. But still, but it does give you that good viewpoint of people falling off the bus because it's just going too fast. Wow, that was a aha moment for me. So if you're just joining us, welcome to the broadcast. We're currently talking about leadership with less stress, greater impact, and more joy. And we've just covered some topics that I have struggled with my entire career: delegation, work life balance, the aha moment that you may have just witnessed about people falling off the bus and how can we create culture. Look, go back and watch it. I know if you're not, go back and listen if you're not listening to this live. This is a great conversation. I already have some questions, but we're going to get to the question at the end. So here's another question I have, because y'all, this is like I do these because I don't know if you know my journey in taking on things and having it turn into dis-ease in my body. So again, one of the things I really want to do is serve those people who are sitting in the CEO executive director seat right now, like Rachel and I did. And so she's speaking from the experience. And I love the fact that she's on the stage. And so I got like four more questions, and then we have a question um, in the chat here. But here's the question: what approaches do you recommend for leaders to stay connected to their organization's mission when they're bogged down by administrative tasks?
I love that question. Staying connected to the mission is one of those things that will really help you not get burned out and will help with everything else we've been talking about. Let yourself feel. Let yourself remember what you are doing there. I think it's really important to collect stories and not just to publish them in the newsletter or put them on the website. Whenever I was in an executive director role, I took time to listen to the case managers or the advocates, to do whatever, it wasn't my business to go be in sessions anymore. It's been a long time since I was a direct service person, but to take time once in a while to go, spend a little time in the shelter or listen or, meet a kid, something to go back and connect me to the work. And to always have with me one story, just for me, for my heart, so that I would remember what I was doing there. So that when I was bogged down with, actually, administration work wasn't my problem, but something else that was making me feel like the soul was being sucked out of my body, that I could.
It's either administrator or boards. I don't know which one.
Other things for me. So when I could do some grounding, I could settle back down, and then I could just connect to that person, that family, that story, for people in environment, that river, whatever it is, to remember, like, what is the vision? What am I doing here? Why is this important to me? And to feel sadness, anger, hope, the life that is what this mission is about. And different things for different people. I have a sort of deep burning anger about the things I worked on, and that was fueling for me. Sometimes to just get really upset about domestic violence and all that is wrong with our world, and then think about one of the survivors that had come through our program and how different her life was. Yeah. That does it.
Yeah. Remembering those stories is good. Not on the questions, but I'm going to say this. One of the drawbacks, I think, for me actually is when we did our capital campaign, my office, and I loved it because of what you're saying, but I could see where it might have drugged me down just slightly. My office, my corporate offices, was in the same building where we provided the service. And it was designed in a way that I was after school programs. So kids could just stop by my office, or I could really go out and just be right in the midst of everything as I walked out of the door. And I designed it based on exactly what you said, but then the practicality of it didn't quite work out for me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that for those who are in that design phase of anything that they're working on, go with caution, right?
Yes.
So how can nonprofit leaders, manage stress, because this is stressful? But what I think is a part of that stress, a huge part of that stress, is the financial uncertainty, particularly now because we're in an economic downturn.
Financial uncertainty is always part of being an executive director or a CEO or a mission-focused leader. And then there are the extreme moments, and we're in one now. Financial downturn, executive orders, there is change daily. And I think there are a couple of key strategies, and I don't want to oversimplify it. So I'm going to say three things. One is, it's really important to remember what is in your circle of control, what is in your circle of influence, and what is not. Focus on what you can control and what you can influence, and do your very best, and this is so much easier said than done, to let go of the things that you can neither control nor influence. Granted, we is bigger than I. So your circle of influence gets bigger when you're in coalition, when you're working, right? So again, not simple, but that's one. Try not to just spin out on things that you can't impact, and decide where you're going to put your energy. Because even, you can't do 100% of everything in your circle of influence either.
No.
So that's one. The other is back to scenario planning. It is helpful to have sort of A, B, and C scenarios. It is not helpful to have scenarios up to Z. So make a reasonable amount of scenario planning, hopeful scenarios for how will you find replacement funding, and less hopeful scenarios so that you know what you will cut or what you will delay or what you will do if it really comes to that. It is better to know. It is better for your board to know. It's better for your staff to know to a certain degree, which is back to communication. What's going to happen if things don't go as you hope they will. This is a moment where I want to say that it's really helpful to have support. And I would like to offer to your listeners, I do a free coaching session. If anyone would like to just come spend a little time with me, my website is www.rkadvising.com. You can go there and just find a free session. And I would love to spend some time with anyone who would just like a little grounding, a little centering in this moment of uncertainty.
Thank you for that. And we'll make sure that we put them in the show notes and in chat. So I know you mentioned those three things, but are there any other techniques that leaders can use to maintain their passion and avoid cynicism when faced with these persistent social challenges, especially in this political and economic environment that we're experiencing?
There are many. One is, there is no more important time than now for your mission. Keep doing it. Keep believing in it. Keep focused on your work. Don't let them throw you off your square. I've been having a little joke with myself, the old James Bond line about shaken, not stirred. I want us to be shaken and then stirred. So be shaken and then be stirred to back to your passion, to your mission. Be communicating with your donors about why this is the moment to come support you in your work, why this is the moment to, even more than ever, come circle round and be about what you do. Keep telling your story. Keep being excited. I've been having a lot of conversations with people about how this is such a unique moment, and also, although amplified, so similar to so many moments we've been through and so many of the same issues we are always fighting. And we have the tools, all the things we always do, and we do well, and we should keep doing them.
Yeah, that is good. As you were speaking, because I love working with boards of directors, and one of my next questions is about board, but it's something that you said is like, now is the time, you're needed now more than ever. That's exactly what I've been telling my clients and working with their boards. Like, this is the time to wake up the board if they haven't been engaged and awake before, because You can have that conversation of we can't be grant reliant or we can't be this. And people think that moment will never happen, but it is happening. And now, as the leader, you have a choice about how we use that information to not be, well, as you said, what don't get off the square,
Yeah,
don't be,
don't get thrown off your square.
don't
Just
get
stay
thrown off the
standing.
square. You could
Yeah.
keep standing, and now boards, let's stand and let's dig into this thing we call individual giving, because you have not done it, and this is the time to embrace it because you can't control the external of what's happening in the societal political realm, but you can control your response and finally start digging into the individual pieces of giving that we've been talking about forever. So anyway, that was a side note. You reaffirmed something for me, but
Well,
go ahead.
and if I
Sorry.
may, I just heard something wonderful from one of my clients in the last couple of weeks.
Hmm.
And this is an organization that has such a huge amount of federal funding that they already know they're going to lose. So they are going to have to make a change.
Hmm.
And in our work together, she shifted from this place of scarcity of, oh my God, we're going to have to shrink, to a place, first a middle place, where she said, well, we're going to need to be smaller and simpler, which is good in many ways.
Hmm.
And then to this place of abundance where she's meeting with her board, and there are so many ways that they can be smaller and simpler. And now she's excited. It's like
Hmm.
a kid in the candy store that, yes, there will be some ways they lose, but suddenly there's this abundant choices of futures of how they might be smaller and simpler and creative and exciting in the work that they do.
Yeah.
And although this is not the future they might have chosen, it's an exciting future for themselves and the work that they do. And watching this transformation in her energy, in the board's energy, and in what they might become is a pretty exciting moment.
It is, and it can be, and that's what I want people to embrace. That whole cycle is this is stand in your square. What can we control? Where are the opportunities that exist right now in this environment? And let's move forward with that.
Yeah.
That's what I would want for people. I don't want them speaking of less joy, less stress, and all, more stress and all that. I don't want them to sit in that feeling of despair or chaos of what they can't control. And that's why I think this conversation that we're having is so important and so timely because a lot of people are facing that right now.
Yes.
Now, I have my last question here, and it is boards. But how can boards support their executives in achieving what we have been talking about, in achieving the balance between impact and well-being, right? But I also want to add a little tag in there that probably wasn't in your notes when I sent them. And that tag is around really giving them some real practical advice as board members on how they can really, really lean into this because this is in my head, and you can reflect on this, but to me, this could be a make or break moment for a lot of organizations.
Absolutely. I will start by saying that I was fortunate to work with wonderful boards of directors throughout my time. I loved working with my boards.
Me too. Yeah.
And what made them wonderful is, first of all, they showed up.
Mm-hmm.
Board members came to board meetings. They were prepared. When they signed on to be on a committee or to do a job we had board agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And not every board member was perfect, but perfect, whatever. Not every board member met their board commitments, but most of them did.
Right.
And when they said that they would bring people to events or they would participate in a certain way, they did those things.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. Have board agreements, meet your board agreements, be engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And when they came to board meetings, they were engaged. They asked good questions. They did not micromanage me.
Mm-hmm.
They did not make more work for me. They trusted me. They believed in my expertise. When I suggested that something was necessary, they asked good questions. They didn't trust
Mm-hmm.
me blindly, which is a
Right.
mistake. But they didn't say, well, could you go do a bunch of research? Could you? They didn't make work for me. They asked the right kinds of questions to be sure they were informed. It was a really beautiful balance of trust and verify
Mm-hmm.
without making my life harder.
Yes.
That's a relationship. They
Yes.
did not get into the daily weeds of my organization. They didn't try to run my staff. I never felt second guessed. I never felt like
Mm-hmm.
anybody was trying to gotcha me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was one, but she left.
Right.
Mostly, I never felt that way.
It's always that one.
Yeah, there's sometimes a one, but for the most part, there was a real trusting relationship.
Right.
And I trusted them that if they were asking a question, it was because it was really for the good of the organization and the mission. And I was interested in getting them a useful answer. So there was a conversation happening.
Mm-hmm.
They were interested in my well-being. If I came to them and I said, I am not doing well, my staff is not doing well, we have a real problem, they wanted to know, what do we need to do?
Yes.
They wanted to support that.
Yes.
And they brainstormed with me about how are we gonna address this.
Yes.
So it was a true partnership.
Yes.
All the way through. I mean, I had this for 22 years with different boards, and that is how I made it for 22 years. They were my kitchen cabinet. They were my people. And when there were problems,
I'm sorry, Rachel. I got to give you kudos because you and I had a similar board experience. That's a whole nother conversation on how we created and found these boards and engaged them in that way. So put a pin in that, y'all. We might be coming back to talk about that. No pressure, Rachel. Go ahead.
Yeah. That's what it takes. It takes engaged, curious, trusting boards who really care about the organization and aren't there for their egos and aren't there to have power plays and aren't there to mess with each other or the executive directors. Now, I will say, if you have serious concerns about your executive director, their ethics, their behavior, what's going on, then you have to ask more questions.
Right.
Again, blind trust is not a good idea.
Right.
But you don't. Yeah, I mean, that it's your job to hire the right person and to make sure that they keep being the right person. But short of that, then you support that person with your words and your deeds.
Yes. And on this less stress, the one thing I will say is boards, because I'm speaking from my experience. Because I think we worked our boards the same way and had those real relationships. If you see your executive living their best life in their type A personality and doing the most, I think it's okay for you to say, you need to take a break. Or have you taken a vacation? I mean, that's just what I wish now in retrospect I would have loved a board member to say to me, because we were partners and I considered a lot of them my friends. And I wish somebody would have said that, because I valued their opinion so much that it might have had an influence over me.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that, Rachel.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Sabrina, but I was very good about taking vacations, so nobody had to say that to me. But I did have board members who would check in and just say, hey, how are you doing?
Got it.
And what do you need? So
good.
That was valuable. Yeah.
So good. That's good. So I have a question here from one of people in our audience. It says, what if finding joy at work could redefine our leadership styles? That's the question. What if finding joy at work could redefine our leadership style?
I love that question. Mm-hmm. I think finding joy, well, let me just start by saying, like, my core belief as a human is that we exist on this planet to find purpose and joy. And I want both of those things for me and for you and for the people that we serve and for our communities. And yes, I think we need to be finding joy at work, in our relationships, in the actual work that we're doing. Now, granted, every task will not be joyful, but many of them can be. And there are ways to infuse joy even into the less joyful tasks. So yes, finding laughter, finding joy in our relationships, even the earlier conversation we had about how can we delegate in a way that is life-giving and joyful, that's it. Like, can we transform the way that we work to be more joyful? So we are excited about what we're doing together and about the way that we're doing it together more often than we're not.
Thank you. Thank you. And so when they're asking about what if finding joy at work could redefine our leadership style, have you found that this process can help shape and bring out some different leadership styles that you may have?
Yes, I'm finding that for myself. I am now not in a leadership role myself, but working with my clients, they are experiencing so much more joy, reconnecting to the joy of what, most of us who are in these kinds of roles, we went into it with a sense of joy and hope and passion. And sometimes that's gotten sort of eroded out of us. And so many of the people I work with are reconnecting to that, and a sense of humor and a sense of lightness and a sense of empathy and compassion and love for the people around them and for themselves. And that does transform leadership.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. Now, here's the question I get asked most often, and it's always around board and fundraising. So if you have any questions about board and fundraising and how I can get my board to fundraise, can you help me? The answer is yes. And you just have to visit my website at www.buildingbetterboards.com to check out my services. Here's the thing. If you're watching in this in rebroadcast, and you have a question that you may have that I can't see because of the technology issues on certain platforms, when you do watch this in rebroadcast, just ask the question in the comments, email. I will make sure that Rachel gets that question, because I'm also going to ask Rachel if you can share. I know you shared your website, but if you can share, is that the best way for people to get in contact with you?
The website is good. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's very easy to find me there. So would love to hear
and we'll
from
make sure that we put it in the show notes. But can you say your website one more time and your LinkedIn profile?
Yes. My website is www.rkadvising.com. And my LinkedIn is just Rachel Krinsky. You'll find me there.
Perfect. So do you have any final words? I know this is such an important topic. It's not one of those sexy topics unless you've been through what you and I've been through. And we know that every executive that's sitting in that seat is going to be challenged by this, whether they are rolling their eye, whether they're in the rolling eye stage or not. Is there any parting words, any final words that you would like to give to them?
Yeah, I think that we've all, at some level, been told that to do this kind of work, to lead towards a mission, we have to sacrifice ourselves. We have to work really hard. We might have to be miserable. It has to be really, really hard. And that's a lie. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be joyful. It can be purposeful. It can be different. And I just want to leave people with a little hope and the idea that there can be a different perspective in a different way.
Perfect. And that's Sipping Tea with Sabrina. See you next time, guys. Bye-bye.